and then talk about the Pioneer Valley game developers, and then give kind of a snapshot of game development in the Pioneer Valley and just how kind of ways to approach it if you are interested in creating a game or pursuing game development in any way. Kind of give you some tips and just lessons learned from myself and then other members of our community. Uh, and I already lost the name of who was speaking, so I'm sorry for that. But if after this talk, at any point, if you want to reach out, happy to either connect you to other people who are doing game dev. If you wanted to learn more about like how do I start from here, feel free to reach out. That's kind of what we do, is connect with other game developers and make stuff happen and try to provide resources for people who want to get into it or are deep in it and just want to throw ideas around. So I'm kind of giving some spoilers here, but I will go ahead and dive into the talk. But my name is Pat King, and I am the co-founder of the Pioneer Valley Game Developers. And oops, let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, I just said that. So myself and one other person started the Pioneer Valley Game Developers, which is a community of game developers in the Pioneer Valley. There's professionals, contractors, studios, students, hobbyists, people who are just kind of interested, people who have no background in game development that but might have like relevant skill sets as like maybe audio production or animation or theater, and they just kind of want to know more about it. But there's about 400 of us, I guess, at this point. Started with myself and one other person named John, who we were really just wanted to know who else was in the area making games, and found a whole lot of people in the area that are just making games. But yeah, started small and just has grown up since then. And I'll kind of talk about a bit about how we approached it there, just from the pure aspect of just community building. But quickly, I guess we started in 2014. We have a number of members just in the Pioneer Valley in Western Massachusetts, but then also are connected in many ways to the surrounding area of game developers and the larger game dev communities. Worcester, Boston, Southern Vermont, Connecticut, New York. We have members who are regularly check into our community groups. And then we're also pretty well connected to larger organizations that are pretty influential in the game dev realm. And I think I'll go into a little bit more about that later, but I'm just going to move on. But basically the three things we kind of do as a community are provide events and opportunities here. We provide co-working for game developers, and we provide a connected community. And I'll kind of explain a bit more about that in a bit. So the first thing being events and opportunities. And so when we started, so the fella in the right picture with the dark black hoodie, his name is John. So he and I were just we both worked for HitPoint Studios at the time, which is one of the larger game developers in the area. And we had both left HitPoint Studios recently, actually, to try to do our own thing and doing things in life other than the studio work for a little bit, but wanted to connect with other game developers. So he and I we started basically one piece, which was hosting these events called Make, Talk, Play. We did those once a month, and they were typically at the Quarters in Hadley. Hopefully you'll have a chance to get there if you haven't been there before. We just started inviting people out, and we'd have a presenter each month just to talk about their own something topical to game development that they're working on. And so that's what we do once a month, every first Sunday of the month. We have been doing those since 2014, except we've kind of put it on pause this past year for a number of reasons, mostly because we're trying to figure out how to make it exciting to attend virtual events if you can't meet in person. And we figured there's a lot of people doing virtual events, so we've just kind of held off and promoted other people's events. We are kicking these back up on May 2nd. If you are interested, we will be hosting our first one, which is about social media for game devs. And we hope to continue doing these from this point on. But they're every first Sunday of the month, and usually we get about 15 to 35 people that attend these. They were in person. Of course, now they're all virtual until we all feel comfortable enough to actually meet in person again. The second thing that we do currently that we have kicked off this past year that has I really enjoy is these bi-monthly meetups, which are from 8:30 in the morning to 9:30, so just an hour long, but it's another castle coffee hour. I'll go into what another castle is in just a moment, but it's basically just doing what we're doing now, getting together with people. It's actually sorry, not doing what we're doing now. It's not presentation format. It's just like let's wake up, let's have coffee, eat some food, again virtually, but let's just wake up together and talk about game dev stuff before the day starts. And that's been really fun. It's been like a different group of people than normally chime in the evening events, and we're just kind of hanging out, talk about. Somebody will be like, "Hey, I'm working on this thing in my game. Do you guys have any suggestions?" Or we'll bring up a topic. And this past Friday was a topic that I posed to the 10 people that attended. That was like, "Hey, if you were entering game development, what would you suggest to yourself, or what would you suggest to other people who are doing game dev stuff that are just getting into it?" And so the first half is kind of this talk is introducing what we do as a community, and then the second half is like their contributions to this talk. So this is also started with an initiative with Greenfield Community College, as we've have a relationship with that institution as well. We also host this event we host Global Game Jam every year, and is that the only one? Yeah, we host Global Game Jam every year, and which is essentially just a game jam, one of the largest held all around the world at the same time. It's usually, I think, at the end of January. We hosted it virtually this year. Previous years, we host it in person, and usually have about 50 people show up. We've hosted it at Hampshire College. We've hosted it at Mount Holyoke in the past. We've hosted it at UMass. And then more recently, we're hosting it at our co-working space, which I'll talk about in a moment again. But yeah, this is just one fantastic event that if you have a chance if you want to learn more about game development in any way, any shape or form, this is the thing to do, is like join a game jam just to get that experience, which is basically a 24 to 48 hour event of making a game with other people. They're super fun. Other things we do, this is an annual cookout that we have on Mount Sugarloaf every year. So this is just kind of like a snapshot into, I don't know, how wholesome we can be in a lot of ways. And hopefully, if you do have a chance to come connect and see any of our events, that you should feel free to just come and hang out. We try to make it as welcoming to everybody as possible. This is an event where we just cook a bunch of food on top of Mount Sugarloaf in Sunderland, Massachusetts, and invite everybody to come and eat food and play games. That's it. So that's kind of like the summary of of the Pioneer Valley game developers. What I'm not really showing here is like the games that we're making, but everybody that's connected to this is making their own games, or typically is making their own games or wants to make their own games. Most people, I think, are pretty active in creating content. So these are the people that are doing it. One thing that we realized when we started was like we were able to meet at the quarters and like have this monthly event, but sometimes it would either get postponed or we want to do other events, and we didn't have a venue. And so a number of us just got together, like, hey, why don't we start a co-working space? And so we did. So I partnered with Paul Haig from HitPoint Studios and started another castle, which is located in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And so this is just basically a 2,400 square foot space, I think. We have, located in Greenfield. It's fantastic. It was freshly renovated ahead of time, but we've got conference rooms and large areas for presentations and working space. And I am the executive director there. And it also has HitPoint Studios there as well. But yeah, we started in 2018. We've got about 10 people that are not tied to HitPoint Studios, that are the specific members. And then we have HitPoint Studios, which has about 15 people. And what this does is we have about 25 people that prior to COVID were working all in the same space, and that relationship was so fantastic of being able to connect with other people that are just kind of casually there working hard, but able to connect on specific problems related to their field. And the majority of us are software or video game developers, but then there's a number of people that were there that are software developers, either in the security realm or backend engineers, or a few animators, and a couple of artists. So and then HitPoint Studios. And if you haven't heard about them, I'll give you a quick summary about HitPoint in a moment. But yeah, it's become this magical place that just feels good to go to. You're connected with other developers. We have grant funding through Mass Development and Greenfield Community College, and we've been able to stay open this past year, and with very, very, very safety precautions in place. But we're not really like inviting people in. Like I'd say we're probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 people attending at the moment, and then HitPoint Studios is all remote, so it's pretty open in terms of what we're doing now. We're not recruiting, just letting you know. Anyway, it's been a weird year. That's all. I think you guys can understand that. Here's what it looks like with an event going on, and yeah, and a non-event. With this is our co-founder again, John, hanging out doing work. So that's Another Castle. We do have a website, anothercastledev.com, if you're interested to learn more. So the last thing we do is provide a connected community. And what that means is we are very, very active on Slack. Pretty much everybody that like joins or comes to the events, we try to get there because we have found that, like, especially this past year, it's incredibly important to stay connected virtually and to be remote. And most of us still want to actually hang out with people and talk about games, but since we can't, we have to do it offline, online, off-site. We use meetup.com to connect people as a evite system. And then we have Facebook, which used to be active, but we don't do that anymore. We have Twitter, which I need to post more, but I never do. There's an Instagram account. I don't know. The website here, it is listed. It's pretty out of date at this point. The biggest thing is our Slack. This is where we actually have the conversations. This is a channel called Devlog, which is basically like people who are making games that want feedback constantly, or that are posting constantly, trying to get feedback. Like I made this cool knight riding a horse. What do you think? Yay! Obviously, it needs some fiddling, but it's nice to have the basics down. You are set. Still hit me up if you run into anything. This is just like the regular conversation and dialogue. I think I took a screenshot of this from a conversation just yesterday. But yeah, this incredibly active community. If you are looking to make a game, this is a great place to connect and to join in, and would be happy to share this with any of you. If you don't want to dive in here, that's completely fine too. But this is where a lot of the conversation's been happening. The other part, what I mean by connected community, is like we're very well connected to people who are doing things from a professional level. So like I partnered with Paul, who's the CEO of HitPoint Studios. Paul used to run HitPoint Studios with Aaron St. John, who is Audrey St. John's husband, which is why I'm speaking to you today, because Audrey reached out and introduced Emily to me, and now we're connected. Anyway, the connected community. Paul has been doing HitPoint Studios for 12 years or so, and has built this multi-million-dollar game studio company that's active. It's in Western Massachusetts, where there's not a lot of other game developers, but we have a great relationship with Paul. We've found internships for people who want to get into game development. Internships with HitPoint Studios. They make a lot of really cool, pretty-looking games. This isn't like your AAA studio or console game development. This is like more app-based, but have done some really impressive medium game studio scale work. With I think a total of like 25 people is what works for HitPoint right now. But like that's one of the largest. They are the largest game dev studio in Western Massachusetts, and one of the largest independent game studios in the state for a while. But yeah, so they're doing a lot. They're active. We're connected there. I'm also the director of production at HitPoint Studios, so I have an in as well, and always looking to meet other people who are doing game dev as a way to either help with people finding opportunities for like contract work, or just like pointing them in the right direction, or potentially setting up work for with HitPoint Studios that would go well, or connecting to our larger community, which is like if you are interested in game dev, you should definitely connect with us in our local community, but also check out the Boston community stuff if you are local to Massachusetts, or if you can get local at any point. There's so many good game organizations that are happening. If you haven't heard of any of these, all of these are fantastic. There's Boston Women Games, an all female game dev group that is pushing for more equality in game development, because I don't know if you've noticed by our pictures, but there are a lot of white dudes that are in game dev around here, and we are always in need and hoping for diversifying our community. So there's the Boston Postmortem group, the Boston Unity group, Boston Game Dev Slack. I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of ways to stay connected. We are very well connected with all of these organizations as well, and try to keep the love going between all of the game dev communities, because there's so much going on and we all want to help each other. But we're also connected to a bunch of exterior game dev communities and other game dev organizations. Game Play Spaces in Montreal, where they have a really vibrant game development scene up there. We have the Rochester Game Dev Group, the Tech Valley Game Dev Space in Albany, and then even Louisville, Kentucky are connected to folks down there. And all of us typically, trying to not, I know I'm going way too far in a lot of this, but anytime there's a chance to to connect in person, we do. Like if they're GDC, which is the Game Development Conference, one of the largest in the world. Typically, we all try to head out to that, which is in San Francisco every year, pre-COVID. We'll see where that all lands now, but they are starting back up again. But typically, we meet with all of these people and try to stay connected when we go. I'm saying this because it's a very small, the more you're in it, you realize how small the game dev community is. So just by connecting with our local community, you have an extension to this larger community that we try to share with everybody. I'm going to stop there and just say hey, we're bigger than just here. And that's it. I'm going to stop on what the Pioneer Valley game developers do, and want to just stop quick. I do have one more part to this, and just to see if you, I wasn't paying attention to the chat, so I'm going to stop and say, hey, let's ask some questions. So I see the first one, which is just, can you explain what a game jam is for those who might not know? And feel free to type any questions in your chat at this point, or I can take a break and you can just verbalize them too. But I briefly summarized this, but a game jam is kind of like a hackathon where I'll talk about the format that I'm used to with Global Game Jam, which is you get together on Friday around 5 o'clock, you have pizza, you watch this video. This is, again, a global wide thing where they give you a theme, and the theme could be like bubbles, or the theme could be like the color red, or the theme could be like homelessness, or don't go, or it's anything. I'm not going to quote the thing that I was going to quote because I'm not going to say it right. But basically, you're given a theme, then you break out into groups, you come up with game pitches in those groups, then you come back together, everyone pitches their games. This all happens in a time frame of about 2 hours or so. And then you vote on what game ideas you like out of those pitches, which is again based off that theme. And then you break out into groups based off groups about 4 to 5 people. Usually you find an engineer, an artist, an audio designer, a designer, and then you just get together and make a game for 48 hours. And then everybody gets back at the end. They show what they came up with, what they developed over the course of a weekend. Typically it's these aren't great. Some of them are fantastic, but usually they're they're not supposed to be the most polished game ever. It's just you're supposed to come out with a product at the end of it. And so by the end of this experience, you've connected with people on a really deep level for game development. You've learned probably some new skills on on how to make a game. You've definitely worked within an engine, and then ultimately you have a product at the end. You've got a game that you can showcase, and many people will use those on their portfolios or their websites or anything like that would be beneficial to be like, hey, I've gone through this process before. I know what it's like to make a game. And granted, it's like a small little time snapshot of like a full game development project, but it's a lot of these are legitimate games and projects that they come away with. Sometimes people carry on and make, like, hey, I want to keep making this game with these people. These people are great. I've seen some really cool relationships and game development come out of these. So if you do have a chance to find one, there's a lot online as well. Please do. Yeah, it's if you have the time to do it, it's a really cool experience. That's it. Any other questions at the moment? All right. How important do you? Okay, a question for you in case no other surface. How important do you find communication skills to be in game dev? Um, pretty important. Absolutely. Although I feel like in a lot of ways you can say a lot of game developers are we're all kind of like socially awkward people at times too. Like, I don't know, not everybody, but I think there's a lot of people who are like they're in the kind of creative space. It is hard to be social. This isn't the question. The question is just like how important do you find communication skills to be in game dev? I do feel like it is very important if you're working with any team. So not just a game development, but any kind of yeah, any kind of team to be able to communicate, to be able to trust other people is very important. I guess now I'm trying to figure out how to answer that question best. But um, is that Barbara Rotundo?
Maybe.
Hey,
Hi. How's it going?
good. Barbara and I may have a history of making games together at one point in time. So, Barbara, did I answer that correctly for you?
Yeah, it's just my ongoing agenda of trying to remind computer science students that it's not just about how well you can code, but actually communicating your ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it really is a collaborative effort that you. So again, so actually, I didn't even state this. Is I am not approaching this from a computer science background. I got into game dev through audio first, and then as a production and design, and so mainly from a producer level. But I know that at all levels, especially on the coding side, is like you you can't be your own player. You definitely have to work as a team, and that involves a lot of communication and a lot of I'm gonna dive into this a little bit more in just a bit, but like understanding all sides of game development, understanding what it's like to be flexible with your game dev, and just that you're not the only player, and you have to work together if you're going to work on a larger team, which is most games tend to be at least more than one person, with some exceptions. So I'll kind of stop there. Any other questions at the moment?
Yeah, I have one question. How can I start with finding someone to talk? I mean, how can I contact to you and then attend those events that I can find someone that I will work with?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll share this. I'll share the invite to our Slack group in the chat at the end of this, just so I don't like interrupt my presentation flow. But happy to share that with you. Happy to share my email with you if you don't want to reach out to, if you don't want to just like dive into a new Slack. But anyway, we'll give you all the ways to connect, and then hopefully that'll answer some of it. And then if you have a specific game idea that like I can try to find somebody that would be better suited to help answer your questions, we'll definitely pass their information along. Um, okay, I'm gonna. The next part was pretty fun. I'll try to keep it light or quick anyway. Um, but I think I'd mentioned this that on Friday I was able to connect with a few people to go through to ask them their opinions of like, hey, if you were giving advice to new game devs, what would you say to them? And, hey, come on. All right. So here are our game developers that met with us on Friday at 8:30 a.m. So starting from the top left, we have Andrew Goebel, who does QA. We have myself, who does production. We have Matt, who's this fantastic indie developer who's just been a rock star lately, making a ton of games, and he's got some just adorable characters in his own games, and really focus on the simplicity of game development. We have Alex Crowley, who is more into narrative design, but is a jack of all trades. We have Elliot Mitchell, who started the Boston Unity Group. He does a ton in VR. He's worked with Bjork on virtual reality music video experiences, and a ton in film as well. We have this dude Aaron. His name here is Simisynth, but who's this bearded, friendly genius, and is also fantastic community member and builder, and is doing an RPG game. We have Amila, who is a UI UX designer who lives in Montreal now, but previously worked for HitPoint Studios. We have this guy Ethan, who does VR development, and we have Kreth, who is a fantastic local artist and community builder, and just all around great guy to talk to for game development. So I posed this question: what advice would you give to new game developers? And so the advice was just get started, like no matter what. Like this across the board, all of us were like, yeah, get started making stuff. Like if you've never done a game, if you want to make a game, if you want to start making your game, get started. And what that means is like, from the top down, like formulate your idea, start talking to people, doing what you're doing now, show up to events, make stuff in your whatever capacity you have to work with, like find stuff online, download engines, game engines. But yeah, just get started. Make a lot of bad games, make a lot of content, participate in game jams, but basically just anything that you are doing to make games, because the more you do it, the more you'll understand it, and then the more you can learn from it and build and do all the things. So the next part is check your scope. Make sure that don't try to overdo it, or build it in iterative phases that you know how to do it, or that you can complete. Don't overwhelm yourself. So make something simple. Elliot gave this anecdote of talking to new student. He taught for a while as well, and he was just listening to his students at one point saying, oh yeah, in 2 weeks I'm going to learn C# and Python and make a game that has blue torch slashing and carving intricate details with particle effects. And he was just like, no, you're not. You're never going to be able to do that in 2 weeks. But good to give yourself a goal. But just make sure that you're starting something approachable and simple. Aaron says be realistic or it's not going to happen. Ethan says start big. So this is kind of the opposite. Ethan was saying start big. Say you want to do all this stuff. Give yourself these massive goals. And then be prepared to, only finish about 10% of them, or a small portion of it. But his point was kind of cool, which was just if you start small, you may not be as excited as you would be about the thing you ultimately want to make. So it's really just but be prepared not to finish. So really just check your scope. And my final thought was just allow yourself to finish the thing that you started as well. I know a lot of people who have spent years on this game, and they always say it's almost there, and they never release it. And that's the saddest thing to me. Just that you can tell that they want, it's their love and joy, but they're so afraid to put it out. So just just get there, put it out, and then do the next thing. Is my suggestion there. That applies to a lot of things in life. Learn as much as you can. Download any game engine that you know of. The two biggest ones are Unity and Unreal. So if you are looking to work in game dev studios, those are, you should at least understand them. There's also a number of smaller engines that if you just want to keep it as a hobby that have large, great community groups. But yeah, just download them, check them out. Learn about them. Everybody agreed with Ethan on learning those two engines, but there are a number of options outside of that. And then Elliot says learn new tools, go to online talks, learn new tools online or at talks. So basically just keep learning, doing what you're doing. You're in college, so hopefully you will keep learning. for a while anyway. And then learn all areas of game development. And so this is kind of goes back to Barbara's comment of like a bit about like just communication. And so you can be very like as comp sci students. I don't know like what else you're into or what else you are studying, but know a little bit about every part of game development. Like if you're not an artist, or if you're sorry, if you're if you're a CS major, take art classes, as Elliot says. I come from an audio background, so I know a lot of people don't understand how audio goes into games. But I do talk to a lot of audio people who, sorry, I also talk to a lot of people who want to get into games that are approaching it from the audio side. They make great music compositions. They wanted to get into game development, but they don't know where to start. They think just because they can write a great audio that they can just work in games, like, or apply that across the board. But what they really need to do is like learn how audio goes into games, learn how to code in games, learn how to do sound design for UI, UX, learn how to dynamically create your sound in a game, in a game dev experience. So there's just the more you know, the more you can apply it across the board and understand every side of game development. So it's not just important to learn your own skill set. Develop efficiently. So don't recreate the wheel. There's so many tools that are out there that are already available. I think early on, there's something to be said for like understanding the tools that you have that are available to you. There is a process of like going through it and needing to create it yourself, just so you can understand how what you're building or what you're about to use. At the same time, there's like I see a lot of waste in all these tools and documentation processes that are already done that people are like, no, I just need to make it myself. It'll be better than this. But it's a lot of times it's like it was already made. Just use it. Use those tools. I think this is redundant. Follow tutorials, online documentation. It's there already, says Matt. But yeah, use what's out there. And even says his anecdote was like, find ways to apply what you've already done and apply it elsewhere, which I thought was really smart. So like he was given the example of, in college, he went to a game dev school where the smart students he was saying might have like a comp sci class, an animation class, and a whatever Photoshop class, I'll just say, and they were able to work on like 3 different projects in all 3 different classes using the same tools that were all building towards the same thing. You can apply that in college. You can apply that to your own production, but yeah, reuse things as best when you can. Do things you love. This is a big one. So Andrew says experience life, do things that aren't game development. Take breaks, I think, is part of that. Explore your interests. So you might really be into, riding horses. You might be into music. You might be into flying kites, whatever people are into these days. I don't know, but keep doing those things. Like do things that make you happy, and then find ways to apply them. Like that's how I ended up ultimately getting into game dev too, is through audio and music and composition, and yeah, it related somehow. But everybody has a thing that keep doing that. Keep doing that thing you love. It's gonna just keep you happy regardless. Ethan says for your game dev process, even if you're not making a game, or if you don't have a game to make a thing, even if it's not a game. So I'm sure you can apply this everywhere too, but my thing is, my approach would be as an audio designer, if I wasn't making games, or what I tell a lot of audio designers, if you don't have a game that you're making that you can give audio to, start by finding another game and apply audio to that in just a video reel. So even though you're not making a game, you're getting the experience of putting audio and matching it to in the game development setting. So you're getting that experience of like composing for games. So anyway, those are the takeaways of doing things that you love and applying it in some way that works in games. There's just a few of these left, and then we'll go into questions. But a big part was finding a community. Like all these people that we've connected with or contributing here is like, they're all saying like, hey, find a community. Emilis Amila says because it's hard to make games by yourself, and this also relates to what Barbara was saying. It's like I have met a couple of people that are trying to do their own thing. These are very similar to the same people who are having a hard time releasing their game. They've been working on it for years. They have a hard time collaborating. They don't want to. They want complete control over the whole process. And again, sometimes this works out great. There are people who can do it all, but I don't know, they kind of fall off the radar and aren't building towards a community. And I don't see the success of those games. I don't see those games coming to fruition as often. So find a community, find people you can work with. Ethan called out a lot of female initiatives at the moment are at the undergraduate level. So Women in Games Boston, I think I mentioned that earlier. Look into those organizations or other communities that, a lot of game dev initiatives that are happening that relate to you or that could help you. There's just so many resources out there for diversifying game development in general, and hopefully software development, and hopefully all sides of life. But happy to share some resources that we know that are local to this area. Reach out to your local game community. That's us for now. And my thing is like we never try. The Pioneer Valley game developers are a local resource. There are other game developer communities in the area, especially on the tabletop game dev community. If you don't find what you want or something that fits, but you still want to find a community, then start one. Like, it's not a competition for me at all. Like, I would love to have less to do overall. But we have this wonderful game dev community here. If you want to be a part of it, and if it would be useful to you, join us. Join in the fun. If not, start your own. Like, do it. Like, this club itself and what you guys are doing here is amazing. Such a great resource and a way to connect people who are interested in game development and other things. Last few slides. Take chances. Go to events like this. Get out to talk to people, because like what people are kind of saying here is like the more you do get out, join these communities, go to events, join online events, join game jams, the more you're going to, one, have your own personal development in games, but also you get lucky and meet people that are doing it that are connected in other places. Showcase the work that you're doing. Put your games in front of people. Talk to people about your games. Like, take chances. Get out there, because that's the only way that you're going to connect with people to do stuff. For jobs, if you are applying, apply. You know, Matt says apply at places that you want to work. Find game dev studios that like match what you're doing. Interactive fiction, or if you're into RPGs, or if you're into first-person shoot-'em-up games, or if you're into more exploratory or education, interactive media at museums, whatever you want. But like there's people doing them. Find those places and apply to them. It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes can be hard to get. And then apply to a lot of places. Amila had a really good suggestion of apply for positions that may not be a perfect fit for you, but could get you where you want to go. So her case was she applied as a UI UX designer, but no, sorry, I can't remember exactly what her position was. Oh, she was talking about somebody else. Somebody who wants to apply for like a design position, apply for something that they could do either in QA or in UX, and then ultimately they may want to get into more game design, but find a path in if you know that it could be there. Also, just get the experience. Take advantage of your education. You all are, in college. You are learning. Build a relationship with your professors. Reach out to your teachers. They're not scary. They are wonderful people usually. I know a couple of them that you go to school with that are great people. They're not too scary. Barbara is kind of scary, but yeah, so. But yeah, reach out. Like they know what's going on. Don't feel free to talk to them. Get mentorship, get advice. Amina says avoid teachers that don't have, not avoid, but don't put as much energy into people who aren't as well connected in the industry. That was her disclaimer there. I think she got burned from a couple of professors that, in the end, did not give her the sound advice that she was hoping for. That can happen. That can happen everywhere. I might not give you the best advice. Other people might not give you the best advice. But yeah, ultimately, you do want to. Hopefully, your teachers are there because they have more experience than you. Is the quick outcome of that. But also get to know your classmates. You don't know who's around you. Hopefully, it's not a competition for you all, but like you never know who's going to do something amazing later on. This is a great time to explore and like work on projects with other people and get to know them. And who knows, somebody might be running their own game studio later on in life, or connect with somebody who is, or work for another place. And just like those connections are so important in game dev. So get to know your classmates. They're not scary either, although they can feel scary sometimes. Make your own class, club, independent projects, and then it says Ethan, makes sense, do stuff again. And then Aaron says, practice your confidence. That's a weird one to give advice for, but yeah, just talk in front of people, do the things that you're scared of doing, practice. It's a great time to do it. Last words of advice, and then I'm going to shut up and let you all ask questions. But I just ask for ridiculous or just practical advice from people. And Matt says, make sure that you have a cat around to interrupt your Zoom calls. If you can kind of see, Matt's cat loves to come and visit, and it's such a nice like way to break up Zoom calls. Is having cats or kids or whoever run into the room and like distract you, especially if you are having a meeting. Or I don't know, takes your mind off stuff. Get a cat. That's all. I say take care of yourself. Exercise, socialize, go to the doctor, do all the things that make you happy, do things, like take care of yourself. That's probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give to anybody, especially this past year. Amila says recommends crunching at least once, so you know never to do it again. This is also very solid advice. It's good to, I guess, do an all-nighter or a number of them, and then realize that you don't want to do that. And then Aaron says more gifts. I think that was just a comment on my presentation in general, but I heard that gifts weren't cool anymore, so I didn't put any in this presentation. So I think that's it. Yeah, so I appreciate that I had this resource of people that I could get contributions for this talk for. It helped fill things in. But that is it. These are the folks that are doing stuff in the area. And then this is the last slide, which is just keep in touch. I'll post like an invite to our Slack group if you do want to join there, and I'll post my email address so you can feel free to reach out to me. Although I am bad at responding to email, and I don't mean to be. Emily has experienced this firsthand, but I do have a couple of things going on, and we'll get back to you eventually if I don't answer quickly. I am very responsive in Slack, so I'm just putting that out there once again. But I think that's it. I'm going to stop there and let you guys ask any questions. Apparently I'm super nice, super nice, and you're allowed to ask me questions.
You're all right.
What were some of the first games I built? That's great. It's not the best game of all time. I'm giving the disclaimer, but the game that like taught me the most was a game called The Secrets of Arcelia Island. And the reason why that game taught me the most, and why I call it my first game, is because it's the first game that like I saw go from start to finish, that I was given full design control at some point in the project. And this was like this beast of a game that we had pitched that was like kept spinning its wheels. We were working with a publisher. It was a point and click adventure hidden object game, and there were a number of designers on it before I was, and they couldn't figure out the formula. Our publisher, which was Big Fish Games at the time, this is at HitPoint Studios, just kept on saying, no, this isn't working. Anyway, I was given the reins to take over, but I was able to like redesign a lot of it, design out a lot of the systems that ultimately got us to where we needed to be, and just I learned so much from that process. Um, Learned about scripting, learned about putting audio into games, learned about just system design for at least this style of game, and was super proud when that finally launched. That wasn't the first game that I worked on, but that was like the first game that I felt like I um, accomplished a thing for, or I felt great about in the end. The rest was like, sorry, to answer that again quickly, the first games I worked on were mainly just either as a small portion of a game. I think the very first one was for coding this Flash game, not coding, designing a Flash game that was like Guitar Hero but with arrow keys, and it was super janky and it never really worked out that well. The design was great, but yeah, that was it. And I think I worked on Littlest Pet Shop, an online Flash version, for a while, which was kind of cute. So, what advice would you give about sticking up for yourself within the game development industry? Um, let's see. So I guess there's a lot there to unpack. Hopefully, you are not in a toxic situation, and you would just be able to remove yourself from a situation in the game industry that was toxic. But like in my head, like I have this, I'm having a number of scenarios playing out. One is like work culture. You definitely like want to fix whatever toxic work culture is happening, and the big piece of advice I can give is like leave that job if you can't solve it within the organization. That can tend to happen. But I've also seen that same piece happen, with online trolling. But I guess without more context, I don't know how to directly answer this one, other than just like leave or work with people around you if you think the problem can be fixed. Um, so I don't know where to push that one. But if it's about the confidence, about like advocating for yourself, in terms of sticking up for yourself, um, and please like stop me if I'm just rambling on at this point. But there's a lot to be said about just trusting yourself, trusting your instincts. I think there is uh, like in every situation, there are louder voices out there that are not letting people contribute in ways that they should be or that they're hired to be, or yeah, they would hope to be in whatever situation we're applying this to. Um, and in those cases, I don't know. Finding any way possible just to advocate for yourself, or again, like my head is bouncing around all these different scenarios now. Yeah, I'm going to stop there because I don't know if I answered it, and I could go a number of ways. But if there's more specifics to ask about that, please ask. Um, do I have any advice or resources, recommendations for people interested in interactive fiction? It's not my, let's see, yes and no. I know some people that are doing some really wonderful interactive narrative projects. I know Twine is like the big game dev mapping. Do you all know Twine? That is the right one, right? We can try getting that one right. Yes, thanks. So I mean, there's that tool. There's a number of that one's so straightforward. It's more about like the narrative approach behind it, the branching dialogue, the choices. But it's like I can't speak to it because it's yeah. Thanks for posting the link. It's that itself. If you don't know Twine, then check that out because that's like a great place to start for any narrative interactive fiction. Um, Otherwise, it's really like putting the visuals in the story, and both of those are not my strong suit personally, but I know people who do fantastic art and who are great narrative designers. So happy to point whoever in those directions if you want to follow up afterwards and introduce you to other people that could assist. Anything else?
Pat, would you mind if I just made a bit of a, oh, Emily, you had a question?
Yes, but you can go first if you'd like.
I just wanted to make a pitch for how nice the community is in this area. Pat is not lying. I had a really nice experience working at HitPoint and meeting all these folks. So if you're interested in game development, you should really, really, really reach out and connect to them. I highly recommend it.
Thanks, Barbara. I will say, like, going back to the toxic culture part, that is one thing that I've rarely seen, and if it has come up, we weed that out quickly. So everybody is incredibly respectful and really just like, is in it for the interest and love of making games together, making games, and probably just like being a part of something. That's it. Just having that community support. And so if it goes awry, if anybody's doing things you're not supposed to be doing, people will reach out to me or other people around, and we cut it out as quick as possible. So we try to be nice. Okay. Well, again, like, if you have other questions, I am around. We'll continue to do things time permitting, but yeah, would love to reach out and love to connect you to the other people who are doing this too in the area. And we'll share anyway, or be helpful in any way that I can. And I'm sorry I didn't show more just like games themselves. Like I definitely, like, after this was over, realized like it would have been cool to actually show the games that we've worked on or stuff from the game jams. But I didn't put any cool pictures in there. But happy to share later. Just a reminder, the next two things that are coming up, let's see, in 2 Fridays is the coffee hour thing at 8:30, but then that's on our meetup group. That'll be announced there. Also on our meetup group, I'll send that link too. I'll do that now before we say the final goodbye. But is our next Make Talk Play, which is going to be on social media practices for game developers, which is really, really hard to for a lot of game devs. Like I would say, like, the hardest part about game development for people is not making the game, but it's like how to do social media, how to promote yourself, and then how to start a business behind it. Like a lot of people who just want to like start their own business in game dev, and those are very hard. Ooh, another question. Or at least aren't really thought through on the game dev side. People just want to make games, but then now that you have a game, what do you do with it? Can I talk through what the start and finish process looks like when working on a game? So the first part is concept, and that's you come up with an idea. I'll say it for like from an indie game developer side, like your own personal idea how you want to start a game. You have an idea. Let's say you want to make a simple platformer game or interactive fiction game. We'll start there. You want to make a game, and you come with a game design. You identify what you need. So you think you're going to need at least one artist. You're going to need somebody who can code, or yourself. You're going to need probably some audio. And the first part is just like creating the game. There is the parts that I was just talking about, the social media, the business part of it, but let's put that aside. You're just making the game. So whatever skills that you don't have yourself, you're going to need to fulfill the rest of those. So you say, I want to make this game. It's going to be, I know what the story arc is going to be. I'm going to write it, or find a writer to write it. I know at that point, you start writing out all the production needs. I'm going to do this in Unity as the game engine because I'm going to want to publish it on mobile. You have to know what you're building towards ultimately. Is it going to be on mobile? Is it going to be a PC downloadable? Is it going to be on a console game? Then when you actually, after you figure out like what all the pre-production plans are, who you need to work on it, how much it's going to cost, then you can start actually making it, assuming that you have the funding for it. If it's going to be we'll call it a project that I'll love, or that it's been fully funded. You have a publisher that is paid for it, or you have a friend that really wants this to happen. Anyway, or you've crowdfunded it. You've got the budget for it. You start putting the plans in place. You start with a prototype of the game, a very small snapshot of what your game will be. You start defining all the systems and iterating on your game from there. So you might make a vertical slice, which is like all of the features that will go into the game. So sorry, you'll start with a prototype, make a small portions or a series of prototypes. You'll go into a vertical slice, which is how you put all of the pieces together in practice. Like it defines all of your systems. That may or may not be an alpha stage, which is basically once you get to alpha, you'd have the full production of the game defined, but it would be full of bugs or not look great. Would still need art. Would have placeholder or first draft assets in it or temp assets. Once you get to alpha, then you would want to build towards the beta, which is like now you can put all of the art in, you start fixing all of the bugs, you start honing in on all the polish, and by the end of the beta milestone, you should have your pretty near complete game. It will still have bugs. You'll still probably be putting some polish in, but it'll be close to the final product. Then you will polish it, fix all the bugs, and then hopefully release it. That's kind of like a typical game dev process. Depending on the type of game that you're putting out, it could be, have either a small handful of people working on it, or it could be this massive, massive production. I don't work on the massive, massive production parts or games, mainly small team development. But that's typically it. Again, another hard one to answer without. I probably could have framed that one a little bit better, but I don't know if that was helpful, but happy to clarify more. Let's see. Before everybody leaves, let me just get these links up here really quick. So, invite people to Mass Game Devs. So this is the link to Mass Game Devs is the name of our Slack. I'm posting this into the channel. Click on it if you want. If you don't want, that is also fine. I'm putting in there, castledev.com. Oh, sorry, I'm sending these. Thanks, Emily. I didn't realize I was just direct messaging you. Emily is sharing the things that I'm posting. So, yep, there's my email address. Either join the Slack, email me. Here is the last thing, which is our meetup invite information. So as we do announce things, they'll go up there, and then you'll be notified. And that way you can passively keep an eye out for things without having to talk to other people in the game dev community. But hopefully you'll attend and reach out and talk. But all the events that I was notifying or mentioning earlier are all notified through here. So 1 second as I pull this up. Here we go. That's it. We also have a Facebook group that I think you could Google, but again, we don't use that one as much anymore. That's it. Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you. It was a fun Sunday afternoon event. It'd be nice to meet you all and hear more about what you're doing at some point. But otherwise, yeah, feel free to reach out, and if I can help in any way, we'll definitely try. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for talking.